So as we have quickly learned, pigeons and dove are in fact the same family of birds. Pigeons usually being the larger members of the species, and doves usually being the smaller species within the family. However, they are the same family, and hence we are interpreting Yonah as pigeon. It is the same group of birds. From with him, me ito, number 3. This is the etnachta. This is stabilizing the phrase. And Noach had observed the pigeon for some time and got to know it better through contact from with him, not talking back and respecting orders. He sent it for the assignment, as stressed by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So now, when there is this connection that is with him, he can now perhaps get a more stable report, whereas previously the reason for sending the array was to stop arguments with that species, and that perhaps was not a good basis for gaining information.
Like, you have this good relationship with the dove, why didn't you just send up the dove to begin with? I mean,
because obviously he developed this relationship in order to send it out. So it's probably happening after he has failed with the array, after he's failed with the crow. Me ito, we have a further note. From with him is an additional characteristic following the pigeon in contrast to the crow. This indicates that for a reliable duty or transaction, one must also elect a reliable partner, objectively tested by various experiences and instances comparable to the case of the crow. He assumed that the choice of the pigeon may prevent disappointing expectations. So he had to be with him before he could send him out from with him.
You've been with him for a year already.
Still, that begs the question of why do we still use the emphatic vayishalach, and he emphatically sent him away, not vayishlach, and he sent him. So again, once you've built a relationship with someone, it's harder to risk them and it's harder to send them out. And yet there was an essential task to be done, so he had to again forcibly send him out. But this time, because he was more worried about the fate of something that he had come close to, rather than using it to solve a problem.
You would think we would have learned this lesson for the spies, when dispatching spies, that the spies should be similarly, from Team Hashem.
Well, they were great. They were the greatest of their generation. It says, Anshe Shem. So that shows that even the Gedolei Hador can be bad. There's no guarantee. Straight
from the top. We continue the ought for observing. Actually, maybe we'll briefly go back to last week's Parsha when Moses and the people conquer the lands of Og and Sichon, specifically the lands of Sichon. Actually barely glosses over the fact that Moses sends out spies again. Mm-hmm. Sends people liragel, and Rashi comments that they had the same. I believe it's Rashi. They had the same outlook and view as Moses did, and therefore their report was completely in sync with what he would have said, that the people of Israel can overcome such an overwhelming enemy, and that's why there's no more mention of them, because they just were completely congruent with the mission that Moses had sent them on. For observing, lirot with the pashta, this is something that's going to slightly emphasize the word and look forward to what's going to come after it. It was made clear to the pigeon that the purpose of its mission was designed for observing from an altitude the extent of the flood and the environmental conditions beyond the limit of the human horizon, as shown by the position of the directional shape of the reading mark. So
Like the
he's,
Parshat
he's,
look-
the Parshat
searching
is
over.
on top and looking up, and up and forward. And in fact, when you get into some of the older texts, and I think we mentioned last week when we were naming the notes, that Parshat in fact used to be written just as a straight line pointing up, and only later on did it get the curvature to it. So certainly he's telling this bird to fly up and to observe from there. Hakalu.
Well, the bird doesn't have much choice. It can go. It can only go up.
Well,
There's a flat out there.
what the Orev had done is he had stayed relatively close to the surface where there was this implied food surface. So he went me'al haaretz. He stayed close to the land, close to the surface of the water. The crow, the Orev. So he's giving different instructions. He's telling the Yonah that it has to go lir'ot, it has to go to see. What does it have? So what does it have to do in order to accomplish that mission of seeing? It has to go up. Watch that. It has to go up and be emphatic and be something that the seeing is the main part of why you're going out there. Hakalu, if they shallowed, with a munach as a part of zakef katon. This is going to separate it out from what's come before and going to lead forward into what's going to go afterwards. So why do we think the water getting shallow is going to separate out and lead to a new reality? Sort of implied in what the reality of the water becoming less is. It's going to separate you out from the flood and it's going to move you forward. So even before we look at the interpretation, you can see that note fits the concept of what this word is trying to tell us. In particular, it was ordered that remote areas be inspected to assess the height of the flood levels there in order to see if they shallowed sufficiently to permit amphibious creatures to find accommodations for survival, as suggested by the shape of the reading mark. So he's perhaps adding more depth than we would have just seen in that word with a menach on it, but he's basically saying that weather conditions from before are no longer applicable and we can move forward into something, and shallow water is a place where different creatures could survive. Hamayim, the water, again with the katon. So what are we going to expect? We're going to expect two conditions, and again, hakalu, hamayim. So the water, remember before, the mayim with the tipcha after the orev was the same as the water before. It looked backwards. This is water that's going to be maybe one way, maybe the other way. Again, even before we read it, we can perhaps infer what this katon is going to tell us. However, if the waters were still deep, the waiting period for partial or total disembarkation may be extended further, and the ark must remain operational, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading. So the status of the water is going to tell us the status of what has to happen on the ark. Is it going to still be our home, or is it going to be something that we can leave? And that's the doubleness that we see in the katon on top of hamayim. Me'al, from over, with a tipcha, so this is going to fold back into what's come from before, and then pause slightly afterwards. The flood may appear spread out in a horizontal view, however the water collections could be shallow and different when observed from over a position of altitude, as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading mark. So, again, the Ot is telling us that he's telling the bird to go up high, and from up high you can sort of gain a perspective of where you've got shallow water and where you've got deep water. So by being up high to see, you can see dark green, really deep sea, or shallow blue near the beach water that you can perhaps even see the surface underneath it. So Me'al is going to look back to Lir'ot. Me'al is going to give us the information that Lir'ot is going to give us.
Me'al also has the bird's eye view over the note. And similarly with the Orev, Me'al is, because the word is over the note. physically
so-
over the note.
And we will eventually go through why some notes are on top and some notes are on the bottom, and the particular features of those. That will be for another day, but that is a feature of Me'al. A Tipcha is always underneath.
But I think the same thing you're saying. I thought it'd be the opposite. Me'al, the note should be Me'al, the note should be Me'al, the word Me'al. And you're saying that the word Me'al is above the
concept of Me'al, because you are Me'al, because you are Me'al.
It's telling the bird to go up.
Right.
And Me'al, the water is on top. The bird is on top and seeing the view of what's
Down.
below.
Why is there a mapik in the word hakalu?
Mm-hmm.
Why is there a mapik in the lamed and the vav? Does that have a significance?
So the vav doesn't actually have that's the vowel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a
Kalu.
furuk. So that's not a
That
mapik.
doesn't
That's
count.
just that's the actual
That's
vowelization.
That's the vowel.
When you have letters like that have a dot in them, it's usually for a grammatic reason that letter should be doubled. So there should be two lameds there, but it's written as one.
And
So
if
that's
there are-
usually what that implies.
And if there are two lameds, the implied double lamed, then
Klala.
lala, exactly, kilel.
God cursed the earth with the one. I don't know.
So again, that's part of what he's asking is the curse still there?
Or maybe the Lamed Vav is the Lamed Vav Tzadikim that sustain the world. Noach was the first of the Lamed Vav.
Really?
Well,
He had to have been, right?
well, there was only
No,
one
that
person
generation
created the
he
world.
had
DNA
enough,
comes
yeah.
from somewhere.
Right.
So we don't know.
I actually
We don't
know
know.
some-
We don't know what that midrash implies in that generation.
Speaking of Lamed Vav, this is so interesting. I don't know if your audience wants to hear it. Do you remember Jerry Fisher? Do you know Jerry Fisher? He was head of maintenance at he was Randy Robinson's old boy
Yep.
before me. Anyway, that doesn't matter. He claims that he had a dream, and he saw, but he didn't know Hebrew at the time, and he saw the letters Lamed and Vav, and then later when he came across the Lamed and Vav, he said, "Wait a minute, what are those letters? I saw those letters in a dream." So,
Okay.
no,
So you're supposed to think it was Jerry.
whatever. Either he was one of the Lamed Vav, or whatever. He was brought on the exterior, but he was a very good person, so who knows. But he saw Lamed Vav in a dream without knowing that it was Lamed Vav.
Cool.
Number 8, Pnei with a mecha. So this is going to slightly connect to what was before, but mostly lead forward to what's going after. Face of, number 8. The face of the underlying earth may be only insignificantly covered on the surface by the water, which would indicate a direction to subside, as expressed by the directional shape of the reading mark. So if, in fact, you could see the face of the land, then we can move forward from here. Ha'adama, the ground, with the sof pasuk. And again, we see an ot granit, and so aleph, ayin, and chet all come from deep down inside your throat.
Guttural.
So those letters will sometimes need that extra accenting on the word, otherwise they get swallowed. Ha'adama, you lose the aleph if you don't separate ha'adama.
Adama.
Ha'adama. So you lose the aleph if you don't give that accent to the ha. If the ground would emerge soon, it would warrant certain preparations within the orc, enabling many animals to find a permanent domicile and sources for existence. So the ground in and of itself being out there would be yet another source of stability, and would be the end of the condition that had happened up until now, the flood. So that would be the stabilizing sof pasuk character of this word being with the sof pasuk. Vayishalach et hayona meito lirot hakalu hamayim me'al pnei hadama. So the dot in the lamed for hakalu, if it wasn't there, then the syllable that was accented would probably be the lamed, hakalu, but because it's hakalu, you sort of have to move the accent back. So that's part of it as well. And I think that's where we're going to end for the evening.
Yes,
Thank you
Shukar.
one and all
Thank
for
you.
for all our
Thank you.
inputs.
Thank you. Yes, Shukar.
I think we're getting closer to perhaps being able to divine some of these by ourselves, and I'm trying
Oh, because you're here.
to specifically pull back before we read the sentences, just so that we can get the concept and see at the more obvious ones that there is an intuitive logic to this.
Like he's taking the training wheels off.
Yeah, I know. That's a great teacher, though, you know, a teacher that judges the level of the student and then allows the student to learn on their own.
And I like that you keep repeating this page, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Shukar.
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you.
one and all.
Thank